Elysia Prime was known across the Galactic Federation as the crown jewel of peaceful planets. With its temperate climate that never strayed far from a perfect 22 degrees Celsius, lush forests of iridescent flora, and a population dedicated to harmony above all else. It was the destination of choice for diplomats seeking respite and scholars pursuing serenity. The planet's inhabitants, tall, willowy humanoids with skin that shimmered in subtle hues of blue and green, had not known conflict for over 7 generations. This was why Captain Mara Valerian of the Galactic Navy's flagship, the GNS Invictus, felt a knot of anxiety forming in her stomach as she stood on the bridge, observing the azure orb through the viewport. Her mission today was supposed to be simple: transport a single child from the tender to Elysia's orbital station, where representatives from the Federation Academy would take custody. A milk run, as the old Earth expression went. But this was no ordinary child. "Status report on subject Kiri," Mara commanded, her voice cutting through the low hum of the bridge. Lieutenant Reyes, her communications officer, responded immediately. "Subject is secure in Holding Bay 3 with Ensign Thomas. Vital signs normal." "Well, normal for him." Mara nodded stiffly. Normal, for Kiri, meant a heart rate twice that of standard humanoid baseline. Metabolism that could process toxins that would kill most adults, and neural patterns that still baffled the ship's medical team. Kiri was only 3 years old, but he had been born on Thanatos, a death world so hostile that adult colonists required exosuits just to venture outside their domes. Children born there developed adaptations that bordered on the supernatural: enhanced strength, accelerated healing, and an intuitive grasp of survival tactics that made them seem like tactical geniuses. The Federation had begun a program to identify these children early, hoping to harness their unique abilities for peaceful purposes. Mara had seen the footage from Thanatos when they'd picked up Kiri. The boy had been playing outside the colony dome, without a suit, catching 6-legged predators with his bare hands, and giggling as toxic spores that could melt adult skin bounced harmlessly off his. "Captain," her first officer, Commander Sato, approached with a datapad. "We've received clearance for the tender launch. Elysia Station is expecting us in 45 minutes. "Good." Mara took the pad, scanning the transfer protocols. "I'll lead the escort team myself. Have Dr. Jian join us. Kiri seems to respond well to her." "Yes, Captain." Sato hesitated. "Permission to speak freely." Mara raised an eyebrow. "Granted. Are we certain about bringing a Deathworlder to Elysia? Their society is fragile. They haven't experienced any form of conflict since the Unity Pact. If Kiri were to have an episode..." "The Federation Academy representatives assure me they're prepared," Mara replied, though she shared his concerns. "Besides, Elysia is just a transfer point. He'll be on his way to the Academy's specialized facility within hours." Sato nodded, clearly unconvinced. "I've taken the liberty of alerting Elysia's Peace Guardians of our special passenger. They'll have a containment team standing by, just in case." "Good thinking, Commander." Mara handed back the pad. "Prepare the tender. I want us planetside in 15 minutes. As Sato departed, Mara turned back to the viewport, watching Elysia grow larger. Something in her gut, the same instinct that had saved her ship during the Proxima conflict, told her this wouldn't be the simple transfer it appeared on paper. She had no idea how right she would be. The tender bay was a flurry of activity as Mara arrived. A small team of 6 crew members were preparing the shuttle, while Dr. Xian knelt beside a tiny figure near the loading ramp. Kiri didn't look dangerous at first glance. He was small, even for a 3-year-old, with a mop of unruly black hair and wide, curious eyes that seemed to absorb everything. He wore a standard-issue jumpsuit, modified to his size, and clutched a stuffed animal that resembled a Terran bear, though Mara knew it contained sophisticated monitoring equipment. "How's our passenger?" Mara asked, approaching the pair. "Dr. Xian," A tall woman with a serene expression and eyes that missed nothing smiled up at her. "Kiri is excited about the shuttle ride, aren't you, Kiri?" The boy nodded enthusiastically. "Go fast?" he asked, his voice higher than Mara expected. "Not too fast," Mara replied, kneeling to his level. "We need to be careful when we visit new places." Kiri tilted his head, studying her with unsettling intensity. "Like quiet walking through the acid fields back home?" Mara blinked, surprised by both his vocabulary and the casual reference to one of Thanatos' most lethal terrains. "Yes, something like that." Dr. Xian stood, guiding Mara a few steps away. "He's been remarkably calm during the journey. His adaptability is extraordinary, though I'd still recommend minimal exposure to Elysian civilians. Their emotional sensitivity might be overwhelming for them if they sense his natural defense mechanisms." "Understood. Let's board and get this done quickly." The journey to Elysia Station was uneventful. Kiri pressed his face against the viewport, watching with wonder as they descended through the atmosphere, passing through wispy lavender clouds. The orbital station came into view, a gleaming silver ring surrounding a central hub that glittered with lights. "Pretty," Kiri whispered, his breath fogging the glass. Mara, seated across from him, found herself smiling. It was easy to forget sometimes that beneath the biological adaptations and survival instincts, he was still just a child who had never seen anything but the harsh landscapes of Thanatos and the sterile corridors of the Invictus. The tender docked with a gentle bump, and Mara stood. "Ready to meet some new people, Kiri?" The boy nodded, taking Dr. Xian's hand as the boarding ramp extended. The reception area was modest, with a small delegation of 3 Elysians waiting. Their luminescent skin seemed to pulse slightly, with blue light, a sign of curiosity. Mara recalled from her cultural briefing. Beside them stood 2 humans in the formal robes of Federation Academy representatives. "Captain Valerian." One of the Elysians stepped forward, extending her long-fingered hands in the traditional greeting. "I am Coordinator Lena. Welcome to Elysia Station." Mara completed the greeting, then gestured to Kiri. "This is our special passenger, Kiri of Thanatos. He's—" An alarm blared suddenly, cutting her off. Red lights began flashing throughout the reception area, and the Elysian's skin flared with pulses of alarmed orange. "Security breach in docking section C," an automated voice announced calmly. "Unidentified movement detected." Mara spun around, her hand instinctively moving to her sidearm. "Kiri?" But the spot where the boy had been standing just moments before was empty. Dr. Xian's face drained of color. "He was right here. I only looked away for a second when the delegation approached." Coordinator Lena's skin had shifted to a pale yellow of concern. "Your charge. He's gone." "Initiate search protocols," Mara barked into her communicator. "All hands. We have a code Vermilion. Subject Kiri is missing on Elysia Station. He is to be considered high risk, but not hostile. I repeat, do not engage with force." The Elysian officials were already consulting their own devices, their fingers moving rapidly over holographic interfaces. "Captain," Coordinator Lena said, her voice tight. "Our sensors detected unauthorized access to the planetary shuttle bay 3 minutes ago. A maintenance pod was activated and has already departed for the surface." Mara felt the knot in her stomach tighten into a cold ball of dread. "He's headed for the planet? How is that possible? He's 3 years old." "The maintenance pods are designed for simplicity," one of the other Elysians explained, skin pulsing with anxiety. "They're virtually automated. One need only climb in and select a destination." "Which he did," Lena confirmed, examining her display. "The pod is programmed to land at the Eastern Grove Maintenance Hub, at the edge of the primordial forest." The Federation representatives looked horrified. "The primordial forest? But that's one of the few truly wild areas left on Elysia. The bioadaptive flora there? for a child from Thanatos. Mara understood immediately. Thanatos had evolved life forms that were aggressive and predatory. Kiri's instincts would be to engage with any perceived threat, and on a planet like Elysia, where even the plants responded to emotional and biological cues. That could be catastrophic. "I need a direct line to my ship and immediate clearance for a search team to the surface," Mara demanded. "And I want all data on the landing site and this primordial forest." "Of course," Lena said, already moving toward the station's command center. "But Captain, you should know. Our Peace Guardians are not equipped for someone like your charge. The most dangerous thing on Elysia is a thunderstorm." "Then pray we find him before he becomes the second most dangerous thing," Mara replied grimly, following her. The maintenance pod landed with a soft thud at the Eastern Grove hub, a small clearing at the edge of the vast expanse of emerald and azure that was the primordial forest. The pod's door slid open automatically, and Kiri hopped out, his eyes wide with wonder. He had never seen so many colors. On Thanatos, the world was primarily in shades of rust red and sulphurous yellow, with the occasional patch of hardy black vegetation. Here, every imaginable hue seemed to compete for attention, from the delicate lavender of flowering vines to the deep turquoise of towering trees, whose canopies swayed despite the lack of wind. "Hello?" Kiri called out, his high voice carrying in the still air. "Anyone here?" There was no response except for a distant, trilling sound that might have been an animal, or might have been the forest itself. Kiri grinned. This was just like the exploration games he played on Thanatos, venturing outside the dome to discover new creatures. He took a step toward the forest's edge, and the ground beneath him seemed to shiver in response. Fascinated, he stomped his foot and watched as ripples of color spread outward through the moss-like covering, changing from emerald to sapphire. "You're alive!" he exclaimed delightedly, dropping to his knees to touch the responsive growth. Beneath his fingers, it felt warm and slightly pulsating, like the heartbeat of a small animal. A shadow fell across him, and Kiri looked up to see an Elysian maintenance worker staring at him in shock. The man's skin was flashing rapidly between green surprise and yellow concern. "Child, what are you? How did you get here?" the worker asked, his melodious voice pitched higher than normal. Kiri pointed to the pod. "I came in that. I wanted to see the pretty colors." The maintenance worker's eyes widened as he noticed the Galactic Navy insignia on Kiri's jumpsuit. "You're from the starship? The authorities must be looking for you." Kiri shrugged. "Probably, but I want to explore first." He pointed to the forest. "What's in there?" "The primordial forest is not for children," the worker said firmly, reaching for Kiri's hand. "Come, I will contact the station and—" But Kiri was already running, his small legs carrying him with surprising speed toward the tree line. The maintenance worker shouted and gave chase, but by the time he reached the forest's edge, the boy had vanished among the densely packed trunks and curtains of luminescent vines. "Ancestors preserve us," the worker whispered, activating his communicator with trembling fingers. "Control, we have an emergency at the Eastern Hub. A child from the Navy vessel. He's entered the primordial forest." On the Invictus, Commander Sato monitored the rapidly escalating situation from the bridge. Reports were streaming in from the planet's surface. A child, matching Kiri's description, had been spotted at the Eastern Grove hub, and had subsequently disappeared into the primordial forest. Elysia's Peace Guardians were mobilizing, but they were clearly out of their depth. "Status update on the captain's team?" Sato demanded. "They've requisitioned a high-speed shuttle from Elysia Station," Lieutenant Reyes replied. "ETA to the Eastern Hub is 17 minutes. The captain requests reinforcements, specifically the Marine Tactical Unit, and additional medical personnel." Sato nodded sharply. "Authorize immediate deployment, and inform Dr. Morales that we may need her xenobiology expertise if the local flora reacts badly to Kiri's—" Unique biochemistry. Sir, the sensor officer interrupted. I'm detecting unusual energy patterns from the primordial forest region. Massive bioelectric fluctuations that don't match any known pattern in the Elysian database. Put it on screen, Sato ordered. The main view screen shifted to show a real-time satellite image of the Eastern Grove area. The forest, which should have appeared as a uniform green mass, was instead displaying swirling patterns of bioluminescence, converging on a small, rapidly moving point. Is that Kiri? Someone whispered. Magnify, Sato commanded. The image zoomed in, resolution adjusting, but the figure at the center of the disturbance was obscured by the forest canopy. What was clear, however, was that the entire ecosystem seemed to be responding to his presence. Trees were bending, undergrowth was parting, and waves of light were pulsing outward from his position. It appears the forest is tracking him, the science officer observed, her voice hushed with astonishment. Or hunting him, Sato replied grimly. Inform the captain of these developments, and prepare my shuttle. I'm joining the search team. The Eastern Grove hub had transformed from a quiet maintenance outpost to a chaotic command center in less than an hour. Captain Mara had arrived with her team to find the area already crowded with Elysian Peace Guardians, their slender forms looking decidedly out of place in the hastily donned protective gear. Their traditional harmony staffs, ceremonial tools used primarily for directing biological growth and healing, seemed woefully inadequate for the task at hand. Captain Valerian, a tall Elysian, approached, his skin cycling between professional blue and anxious yellow. I am Chief Guardian Tolan. We have established a perimeter around the forest entry point, but I must inform you that we are not equipped for pursuit into the deep forest regions. I understand, Mara replied, surveying the tree line. The forest looked different than it had in the satellite images, more active, somehow, with vines swaying and flowers opening and closing as if breathing. What can you tell me about this forest that might help us locate Kiri? Tolan gestured to a holographic display that had been set up nearby. The primordial forest is one of our most sacred ecological preserves. It is home to the oldest and most responsive botanical species on Elysia. The plants here have evolved a collective consciousness of sorts. They communicate through bioelectric signals and respond to emotional and biological stimuli. And how would they respond to someone like Kiri? Dr. Jian asked, joining them. Tolan's skin rippled with troubled purple. We cannot be certain. No being from a Deathworld has ever entered the forest. Its normal response to visitors is curious investigation, but your child's biochemistry is aggressive by our standards. The forest might perceive him as a threat. Or a fascinating new specimen, added a female Elysian who had been analyzing data nearby. She stepped forward, her skin a scholarly shade of deep blue. I am Nara, elder of the Eastern Settlement. I have studied the forest my entire life. If I may. She gestured to the display, which shifted to show the swirling patterns they'd observed from orbit. These are not threat responses, Nara explained. This is a pattern we've only seen during the confluence, a rare event when the forest collectively focuses on a single point of interest. It is more akin to rapt attention. So the forest is studying him? Mara asked. Yes, but with an intensity we've never witnessed before. It's as if... Nara paused, her skin flushing with excited pink. As if it recognizes something in him. Something primal that resonates with its own nature. A commotion at the perimeter interrupted them. Commander Sato had arrived with the Marine Tactical Unit, 20 soldiers in combat gear that looked obscenely out of place in the peaceful setting. Captain, Sato saluted crisply. Reinforcements as requested. We've brought tracking equipment calibrated to Kiri's biosignature, and defensive measures should the local flora become hostile. Mara nodded, ignoring the ripples of alarmed orange spreading through the gathered Elysians. Good. Set up a command post here and prepare 3 search teams. I want "Captain," one of the Elysian technicians called out, his skin pulsing with urgent white light. "We're detecting a massive surge of bioelectric activity, approximately 2 kilometers into the forest. It appears to be centering on an area known as the Dream Garden." Nara gasped, her skin blanching to pale blue. The Dream Garden? But that's the heart of the vortex region, where the forest's consciousness is most concentrated. If the child has reached there... "What?" Mara demanded. "What happens if he reaches this Dream Garden?" "The Dream Garden shapes itself according to the subconscious of those who enter it," Nara explained, her voice hushed. "For Elysians, it creates peaceful landscapes of beauty and contemplation. But for a child from a Deathworld..." Understanding dawned on Mara's face. "It would create the environment he's adapted to survive in. A piece of Thanatos. Right here on Elysia." "Precisely," Nara confirmed. "And such a manifestation could permanently alter the forest's biological matrix. The corruption could spread beyond the Dream Garden, potentially transforming large sections of our most sacred ecosystem into a death zone," Sato finished grimly. Mara turned to her team. "Decision made. We move now. Tactical units will establish a containment perimeter around this Dream Garden. Dr. Jian and I will lead the direct retrieval team. Minimal force, non-lethal countermeasures only." She turned to Nara. "Elder, we need a guide. Someone who knows the forest intimately." Nara's skin shifted to determined green. "I will guide you myself, Captain. But we must hurry. The confluence is accelerating." As the teams began to mobilize, a small group of local Elysians had gathered at the perimeter, their skin pulsing with religious gold. One stepped forward, addressing Nara in their melodious language. The exchange seemed heated, with Nara's skin flashing irritated purple in response. "What's that about?" Mara asked as Nara rejoined them. "Some of my people believe the child's arrival was foretold," Nara explained reluctantly. "There is an ancient prophecy about the child of Goda, the guardian of deep awareness, who would come from the stars to awaken the forest's true potential." "And they think Kiri is this child?" Dr. Jian asked, intrigued. "Some do. They wish to protect him from your military force," Nara said, glancing pointedly at the armed Marines. "I've assured them our goal is the child's safety, not his capture. But I suggest we move quickly, before this spiritual interpretation spreads." Mara nodded grimly. "The last thing we need is a religious movement forming around a lost 3-year-old with hyper-adaptive biology. Let's move out." The search party entered the forest with Nara leading the way, followed by Mara, Dr. Xian, and a small team of Marines equipped with specialized sensors. The moment they passed beyond the tree line, the atmosphere changed palpably. The air became thick with exotic scents, and the ambient light shifted to a dreamlike blue-green glow emanating from the vegetation itself. "The forest knows we're here," Nara whispered, her skin rippling with respectful blue. "It's assessing our intentions." Mara glanced uneasily at the vines that seemed to curl slightly toward them as they passed. "Will it interfere with our search?" "Not if it perceives us as benevolent," Nara replied. "But your weapons?" She gestured to the Marines' equipment. "The forest recognizes tools of destruction." As if in response to her words, a curtain of delicate filaments descended from the canopy above, forcing the group to halt. The filaments gently brushed against their faces and hands, leaving a slight tingling sensation. "Don't move," Nara cautioned. "It's reading us, our biochemistry, our emotional states." After a tense moment, the filaments retreated, and the path ahead seemed to widen slightly, luminescent fungi illuminating the way. "It's granting us passage," Nara said, relief evident in her voice and the calming blue of her skin. "But I sense concern. The forest is troubled by what's happening in the Dream Garden." They continued deeper, the environment growing increasingly surreal. Trees that resembled nothing on Earth twisted into impossible shapes. their bark spiraling with patterns that seemed to move when viewed peripherally. Flowers opened as they approached, releasing puffs of glittering spores that Dr. Xian hastily collected in specimen containers. "These spores are rich in psychoactive compounds," she murmured, studying her scanner. "Harmless to us, but they appear to be communication vectors for the plant collective." "Captain," one of the Marines called softly, indicating his sensor unit. "I'm getting irregular readings on the tracker. Subject Kiri's biosignature appears to be multiplying." "Impossible," Mara said, moving to examine the display. Sure enough, what had been a single bright point was now a cluster of similar readings, all pulsing in unison. "Some kind of interference?" "No, Captain," Nara interjected, her skin paling with realization. "The dream garden is mirroring him, creating biological echoes that match his pattern. It's trying to understand him by becoming him." A distant sound, something between a child's laugh and a musical chime, echoed through the trees, setting the entire forest canopy trembling in response. "Kiri!" Dr. Xian called out instinctively. The sound came again, closer this time, followed by a rustling movement in the undergrowth ahead. The Marines raised their weapons automatically, but Mara signaled them to stand down. "Kiri," she called, her voice firm but gentle. "It's Captain Mara. We've come to take you back to the ship." A small figure emerged from behind a phosphorescent tree trunk, but it wasn't Kiri. It appeared to be a construct of living vegetation, shaped into a child-sized form that approximated Kiri's features, down to his unruly hair, which was composed of fine, swaying tendrils. "What in the stars?" one of the Marines whispered. The plant Kiri tilted its head, studying them with eyes made of glowing sap. It opened its mouth, and Kiri's voice emerged. "I'm playing hide-and-seek. You have to find the real me." Then it giggled, the same musical sound they'd heard before, and darted back into the undergrowth. "It's leading us to the dream garden," Nara said, her skin flushing with academic excitement despite the tension. "The forest is facilitating our search, or luring us deeper for its own purposes," Sato muttered, having joined them from the perimeter team. "Either way, we follow," Mara decided, gesturing the team forward. "Stay alert, and remember, our priority is Kiri's safety. No aggressive actions against the forest unless absolutely necessary." As they pressed on, following fleeting glimpses of the plant construct, the forest grew denser and stranger. Gravity seemed to fluctuate subtly, and time itself felt stretched, seconds expanding into what felt like minutes. The Marines' communications equipment began to malfunction, their signals distorted by the intense bioelectric field permeating the area. "We're approaching the vortex," Nara announced, her voice hushed with reverence. "The boundary of the dream garden." Ahead, the forest opened into a vast clearing, but what should have been open space was instead a swirling mass of vegetation, trees, vines, flowers, and fungi, all in constant motion, creating a living whirlpool of vibrant colors centered on a point they couldn't yet see. "Life readings are off the charts," Dr. Xian reported, staring at her scanner in disbelief. "The biomass density here is 10 times greater than the surrounding forest, and the energy output, it's comparable to a small fusion reactor." At the edge of the vortex, they paused. The plant Kiri had vanished, but now dozens of similar constructs could be seen moving within the swirling vegetation, each one a perfect replica of the boy, all laughing and playing as if this chaotic maelstrom were the most natural playground imaginable. "How do we find the real Kiri in all this?" Mara asked, raising her voice over the rustling symphony of the vortex. Nara's skin pulsed thoughtfully. "The dream garden responds to consciousness. If we project a unified purpose, our desire to find and protect the child, it may guide us." "Worth a try," Mara agreed. "Everyone, focus on Kiri. Think about bringing him home safely." As they concentrated, A remarkable change swept through the vortex. The chaotic motion began to synchronize, the swirling vegetation aligning into a spiraling pathway that led toward the center. The plant Kiri constructs gathered along this path, pointing inward with limbs of flexible wood and vine. "It's working," Nara breathed, her skin glowing with spiritual gold. "The forest is responding to our collective intent." They followed the spiraling path, moving deeper into the vortex. The Marines kept their weapons ready but lowered, eyes darting nervously at the impossible flora that surrounded them. One massive bloom, easily the size of a human torso, tracked their movement like a sentient eye, its petals dilating and contracting. As they neared the center, the environment changed again. The vegetation here was different, darker, more aggressive in form, with thorns and toxin sacs that resembled the flora of Thanatos. The air carried a faint, acrid scent, reminiscent of sulfur. "The forest is manifesting elements from Kiri's homeworld," Dr. Jian observed, "creating a familiar environment for him. Or testing its defenses against a new threat," Sato countered. "Adaptive evolution in real time." Finally, they reached the heart of the vortex, a small, perfectly circular clearing, where the ground was covered not in Elysian moss, but in the rust-red soil of Thanatos. And there, sitting cross-legged in the center, was Kiri. The boy looked completely at ease, surrounded by a ring of glowing crystals that had emerged from the soil. In his hands, he held what appeared to be a small branch that pulsed with blue-green light. Around him, miniature versions of Thanatos's predatory hexapods, constructed entirely from plant matter, scurried in playful circles. "Kiri," Mara called softly, not wanting to startle him. The boy looked up, his face breaking into a delighted smile. "Captain, look what I found! The forest wanted to play with me." As he spoke, the branch in his hands pulsed brighter, and the entire vortex responded with a wave of harmonized bioluminescence. "He's connected to it," Nara whispered, her skin cycling through shades of awe and concern. "The forest has formed a symbiotic link with his consciousness." "Is that dangerous?" Mara asked, eyeing the pulsing branch with apprehension. "For the forest? For Kiri? Or for Alicia?" Nara replied. "I do not know. This is unprecedented." Dr. Xian took a cautious step forward. "Kiri, sweetie, we need to go now. The nice people from the academy are waiting to meet you." Kiri's smile faltered. "But I like it here. The forest is teaching me things." He held up the glowing branch. "See? It shows me how everything is connected, like on Thanatos, but not scary." Before Dr. Xian could respond, her communicator crackled with an urgent transmission from the perimeter team. "Captain, we have a situation. A large group of Elysian civilians has gathered at the forest edge. They're claiming the child is sacred, the child of Gada. Local authorities are losing control of the crowd." Simultaneously, Sato received a message from the orbital station. "Commander, Elysian government officials are demanding immediate containment of the forest anomaly. They're concerned about permanent, ecological damage." The tension in the clearing thickened as Mara processed this information. "We need to extract Kiri now, before this escalates further." She approached the boy carefully, kneeling to his level. "Kiri, I know you're having fun, but we need to go. The forest will still be here if you want to visit again someday." Kiri looked doubtful, clutching the glowing branch tighter. As he did, the vortex around them accelerated, the vegetation moving more frantically. "The forest doesn't want me to leave yet," he said, his voice suddenly older, more certain than any 3-year-old's should be. "It says it has more to show me." Nara's skin paled to anxious white. "Captain, we should proceed with extreme caution. The forest consciousness is fully invested in the child now. Forcing separation could trigger defensive measures." "What kind of defensive measures?" Sato demanded. As if in answer, the ground beneath them trembled. The plant-constructed hexapods suddenly grew in size, their playful movements becoming more predatory. Vines as thick as a human arm snaked down from the canopy, forming a protective barrier around Kiri. "That kind," Nara said grimly. Mara straightened, assessing the rapidly deteriorating situation. "Commander, have the tactical team prepare containment measures. Non-lethal only. Sonic disruptors calibrated to plant cellular frequencies." "Captain," Dr. Xian protested, "such measures could harm Kiri if he's linked to the forest consciousness." "We need options." "Doctor," Mara snapped, watching as more vines descended, weaving themselves into an increasingly dense cocoon around the boy. "Let me try." Nara stepped forward, her skin shifting to the deep purple of formal authority. She addressed the forest directly, speaking in the ancient Elysian language, a flowing, musical tongue that seemed to make the vegetation pause in its frantic movement. For a moment, it seemed to be working. The vines slowed their weaving, and Kiri looked up with curiosity. But then a new sound cut through the clearing, the high-pitched whine of energy weapons powering up. At the edge of the vortex, the Marine Perimeter team had activated their sonic disruptors, aiming them toward the center where Kiri sat. "Countermand that order!" Mara shouted into her communicator, but it was too late. The Marines, responding to automated threat assessment protocols triggered by the forest's defensive movements, fired a warning burst. The sonic pulse rippled through the vortex, causing the plant life to recoil violently. Kiri cried out, clutching his head as the glowing branch in his hands flared blindingly bright. The forest responded with immediate and overwhelming force. The ground erupted with massive thorned vines that lashed out toward the Marines. The plant hexapods transformed into true predators, their flowery mouths opening to reveal crystalline fangs. "Fall back," Sato ordered, pulling the nearest Marine away from a striking vine. In the chaos, Mara kept her focus on Kiri. The boy was still at the center, but now he stood with his arms outstretched, the glowing branch held high. His face was a mask of concentration beyond his years, and around him, a dome of interlaced vegetation was forming, a protective barrier separating him from the conflict. "Kiri!" Mara called out, dodging a whipping vine to move closer. "You need to stop this. Tell the forest we aren't here to hurt you." "They fired at us," Kiri replied, his voice eerily calm. "The forest is protecting me, like the dome protects people on Thanatos." The situation was escalating beyond control. The Marines had formed a defensive circle, their sonic disruptors now firing continuously to keep the aggressive plant life at bay. Nara was frantically trying to communicate with the forest, her skin flashing with urgent diplomatic purples and golds. But the consciousness that had been so receptive earlier now seemed locked in defensive mode. Dr. Xian managed to reach Mara's side, her medical scanner still active. "Captain, Kiri's neural patterns are synchronizing with the forest's bioelectric field. If this continues, the integration could become permanent. And if we use force to separate them? Potentially catastrophic for both," Dr. Xian admitted. "But I'm more concerned about that." She pointed to the glowing branch, which was now pulsing in a pattern that matched the readings on her scanner. "It's acting as a conduit, amplifying Kiri's natural abilities. His Deathworld adaptations are being magnified exponentially." Mara made a decision. "Commander Sato, order all units to cease fire and fall back to minimum safe distance. Have them power down all weapon systems." "Captain," Sato questioned, even as he deflected a striking vine with his arm guard. "That's an order, Commander. Full withdrawal." Sato hesitated only a moment before relaying the command. Gradually, the Marines disengaged, powering down their disruptors and retreating toward the edge of the vortex. As the weapons fell silent, the forest's frenzied attack slowed, though the protective dome around Kiri remained intact. Mara approached alone, her hands held open at her sides. "Kiri!" she called, her voice steady and calm. "The fighting has stopped. No one is going to hurt you or the forest. Can we talk? Inside the dome, Kiri tilted his head, considering. The branch in his hands dimmed slightly. The forest is scared, he said finally. It never had to fight before. I understand, Mara replied, taking another careful step forward. We were scared too. That's why everyone reacted badly. But we can fix this if you help us. The dome of vegetation parted slightly, creating a small opening through which Kiri peered. How? The forest has been talking to you, hasn't it? Showing you things. Kiri nodded. It showed me how everything is connected here. Not like Thanatos, where everything tries to eat you. Here, everything helps each other grow. That's right, Mara said, seizing on his understanding. Elysia is different from your homeworld. But right now, the forest is acting like Thanatos, attacking to defend itself. That's not what it wants to be, is it? Kiri frowned thoughtfully, looking down at the branch in his hands. After a moment, he shook his head. No, it's confused. It learned too much from me too fast. Can you help it remember how to be peaceful again, like it was before? The boy considered this, his small face serious. Then, slowly, he nodded. I think so. But I need to show it something first. Before Mara could ask what he meant, Kiri closed his eyes. The branch in his hands began to pulse with renewed intensity, but this time, in a softer, more harmonious rhythm. The dome around him gradually unfurled, the aggressive thorns receding, replaced by delicate flowering vines that released a sweet, calming scent. Throughout the vortex, the transformation spread. The predatory plant hexapods reverted to their earlier playful forms. The towering defensive vines sank back into the earth. Even the Thanatos-like elements, the rust-red soil and sulfurous air, began to fade, returning to Elysian norms. What's happening? Sato asked, watching in amazement as the forest settled into peaceful motion once more. He's teaching it, Nara realized, her skin glowing with understanding. Not just how to fight, but how to adapt without losing itself. The wisdom of survival without aggression. In the center of the clearing, Kiri opened his eyes. The branch in his hands had transformed, flowering into a beautiful crystalline bloom that shed soft particles of light. He smiled at Mara, then carefully placed the flowering branch on the ground. The forest understands now, he said simply. It was just surprised before. As he stepped away from the branch, the vegetation around it grew upward, cradling the glowing flower in a natural pedestal of intertwined branches. The vortex, which had been a chaotic maelstrom earlier, now rotated in a gentle, orderly spiral, with the crystalline bloom at its heart. It wants to keep learning, Kiri explained, walking toward Mara. But slower, with more people to teach it different things. Mara knelt, meeting his eyes. You did something remarkable, Kiri. You helped the forest understand without hurting anyone. The boy shrugged, suddenly just a 3-year-old again. It was easy. The forest just needed to know it doesn't have to be scared, even when new things happen. Dr. Xian approached cautiously, her scanner still active. The symbiotic connection is stabilizing, she reported with relief. The forest is maintaining the link, but at a much lower intensity. It's more like a conversation now, rather than a fusion. We should return to the hub, Sato suggested, eyeing the vortex with lingering caution. Before the situation with the locals escalates further. Mara nodded, standing and offering her hand to Kiri. Ready to go meet some new people at the academy? They'll be very interested to hear about your adventure. Kiri took her hand but glanced back at the flowering branch. Can I come back sometime? The forest will miss me. I think that can be arranged, Mara said, surprised to find she meant it. What had begun as a crisis had transformed into something profound. A first contact of sorts, between a Deathworld child and a sentient ecosystem. As they made their way back through the forest, the path was clear and welcoming. The vegetation seemed to part before them, and occasional bursts of bioluminescence lit their way, like friendly guides. "The forest is honoring you," Nara explained to Kiri, her skin glowing with respectful blue. "You've become part of its consciousness now, in a small way." "Cool," Kiri replied with childish enthusiasm, then yawned widely. The events had clearly exhausted him, and by the time they reached the forest's edge, he was asleep in Dr. Xian's arms, his face peaceful. At the Eastern Grove hub, they emerged to find a scene of tension. The gathered crowd of Elysians had grown, their skin cycling through religious golds and expectant blues. When they saw Kiri asleep in Dr. Xian's arms, a collective murmur rippled through them. "The child of Gata returns," someone called out, and others took up the phrase like a chant. Beside them, Elder Nara's skin flushed with irritation. "My people are overreacting. This religious interpretation will only complicate matters." "Then give them a different story," Mara suggested quietly. "One based in truth but without the mysticism." Nara considered this, then stepped forward to address the crowd. Her skin shifted to the deep purple of authority, and she spoke in a ringing voice that carried across the clearing. "Friends, neighbors, fellow Elysians, today we witnessed not a miracle, but a meeting of worlds. This child, a survivor from a harsh planet, has shown our sacred forest a new way to adapt and grow. Not through conflict, but through understanding. The forest has learned, and so must we." As she spoke, the crowd's mood shifted, religious fervor giving way to thoughtful curiosity. Many approached closer, their skin now showing scholarly blue rather than spiritual gold. While Nara continued her impromptu diplomacy, Mara convened with Sato, Dr. Xian, and the Elysian officials who had arrived during the crisis. "The situation is contained," Mara reported, "but we've created a significant cultural impact that will need careful management." Coordinator Lena, who had descended from the orbital station, nodded in agreement. "The primordial forest is our most sacred ecological treasure. Its connection to your young charge will need to be studied and understood. Which brings us to the question of what happens next," Sato added, looking at the sleeping Kiri. "The Federation Academy is expecting transfer of custody within hours." "I propose a compromise," Dr. Xian suggested. "Kiri clearly has abilities beyond what we anticipated, not just survival adaptations, but a capacity to connect with and influence complex biological systems. The Academy will want to study this, but Alicia has a vested interest as well." "A joint research initiative?" Coordinator Lena suggested, her skin brightening with interest. "Precisely," Dr. Xian nodded. "A collaborative program between the Academy and Elysian botanical experts. Kiri could still receive his education at the Academy, but with regular supervised visits to Alicia for continued interaction with the forest." Mara considered the proposal. It was unorthodox, but then everything about this mission had departed from standard protocol the moment Kiri vanished. "I'll recommend it to Fleet Command. Given the circumstances, I believe they'll approve." "And in the meantime?" Sato asked. "In the meantime," Mara decided, "we proceed with the transfer to the Academy representatives as planned. But we include a full report on today's events and recommend a specialized care team familiar with both Deathworld adaptations and botanical symbiosis." As the officials continued their discussion, formalizing agreements and protocols, Dr. Xian sat with the still sleeping Kiri on a bench near the forest's edge. The boy stirred slightly, opening his eyes briefly. "Is the forest okay?" he mumbled sleepily. "Yes, Kiri," Dr. Xian assured him, smoothing his unruly hair. "The forest is fine, and you'll be able to visit it again soon." Satisfied, the boy drifted back to sleep, a small smile on his face. Dr. Xian noticed something clutched in his hand, a tiny, crystalline flower, similar to the one he had created in the heart of the vortex. It pulsed with gentle light in rhythm with his breathing. "A little souvenir?" Mara asked, joining them. "A gift, I think," Dr. Xian replied. "A piece of the connection he formed." Mara studied the sleeping child with newfound respect. What they had initially seen as a potential threat, a Deathworld toddler with dangerous adaptations, had instead become a bridge between worlds. Kiri's unique perspective, shaped by survival on harsh Thanatos, had offered the Elysian forest new possibilities for growth and understanding. "You know," Mara said quietly, "we came here thinking we needed the Galactic Navy to contain one small boy. It turns out what we really needed was that boy to teach all of us something new." "Isn't that always the way?" Dr. Xian smiled. "We learn the most from the sources we least expect." As the day faded into Elysia's gentle twilight, preparations were made for the final transfer. The Federation Academy representatives, now fully briefed on the day's extraordinary events, waited aboard a small, comfortable transport vessel designed specifically for young travelers. It featured colorful interiors, child-sized furnishings, and a team of educational specialists rather than the military personnel Kiri had known aboard the Invictus. Kiri, now awake and refreshed, stood at the boarding ramp with Mara, Dr. Xian, and Elder Nara. "Remember what we discussed," Mara told him seriously. "The Academy has special teachers who will help you understand your abilities, and you'll come back to visit the forest when it's time." Kiri nodded solemnly. "I'll practice being careful with my strength, like on the ship, and I won't run away again." "That would be appreciated," Mara replied with a small smile. Elder Nara knelt before the boy, her skin a warm, affectionate blue. "The forest has given you a gift, young one." She gestured to the crystalline flower he still clutched. "It will remind you of what you learned here, that strength comes in many forms, not just in survival and defense." "And here's something from me," Dr. Xian added, pressing a small paper object into his other hand. It was an origami crane, delicately folded from shimmering paper. "On Earth, these are symbols of peace and hope, a different kind of strength." Kiri examined both gifts with solemn attention, then carefully tucked them into the pocket of his new academy jumpsuit. "Thank you for finding me," he said, with a directness that only children can achieve. "Even though I wasn't really lost, I was just exploring." "That's what we're all doing, in our way," Mara replied, finding unexpected wisdom in his childish perspective. Exploring and learning. With final goodbyes exchanged, Kiri boarded the Academy vessel, turning once at the top of the ramp to wave enthusiastically before disappearing inside. As the ship lifted off, its sleek form catching the last rays of Elysian sunlight, Mara felt a complex mixture of relief, accomplishment, and something else, a sense that they had witnessed the beginning of something important. "What happens now?" Sato asked, as they watched the vessel ascend toward orbit. "Now," Mara said, "we file what might be the strangest mission report in Galactic Navy history. And then, we prepare for the inevitable follow-up questions from Command." "And for Elysia?" Nara asked, her skin shifting through thoughtful hues. "For Elysia, a new chapter begins," Coordinator Lena said, joining them. "The Elysian Council has already approved funding for what they're calling the Biotechnological Reconciliation Program, a new initiative to study the integration of diverse biological systems with our own ecosystem." "Inspired by one lost toddler," Dr. Xian observed with a smile. "Not lost," Mara corrected, remembering Kiri's words. "Just exploring." As the group made their way back toward the waiting shuttles, Mara paused for one last look at the primordial forest. In the deepening twilight, she could see pulses of bioluminescence spreading through the canopy, rhythmic waves of light that seemed to follow the departing Academy vessel like a farewell gesture. For all the chaos of the day, there was a sense of rightness to its conclusion, A Deathworld child had found something beyond survival. A peaceful planet had encountered challenge without losing its essence. And the Galactic Navy, for all its protocols and firepower, had discovered that containment sometimes meant creating space for growth rather than imposing limitations. Tomorrow would bring new missions, new challenges. But tonight, as the first stars appeared above Elysia Prime, Captain Mara Valerian allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction in a job well done, even if it had been accomplished in ways no training manual could have predicted. In the heart of the primordial forest, at the center of the now peaceful vortex, the crystalline bloom that Kiri had created continued to pulse with gentle light. Around it, the consciousness of the forest contemplated all it had learned from its brief encounter with the Deathworld Toddler. New possibilities, new adaptations, new ways of understanding the universe beyond its boundaries. Not an ending, but a beginning. For Kiri, for Elysia, and for the greater galactic community that would soon learn of their extraordinary encounter. Just as it should be,